You know, one of the things that I really love about Jesus, that was the promises that he made. I mean, I love his promises. I love the fact that I'm loved, that he cares for me, that he is completely compassionate about who I am. And in that love, I am just so protected. And I'm given grace, I'm given forgiveness, I'm given an opportunity to be able to know the heart of his Father. These are beautiful things. And the blessing of life, where he tells me that my life has significance and purpose because he's a part of my story. I love these promises, and his promises that in my life there will be storms. Did I just say storms? Hey, you know one of the most incredible things about Jesus as well was he knows how to be able to keep it real. And one of the things that Jesus wanted you and me to totally understand about the story that we live, and that is that we live in a broken world. And the second thing about that is that you and I need to appreciate something, and that is this. In our lives, there will be storms. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus talks about those storms. As a matter of fact, he makes this promise to us. He says, and then the storms came. And by the way, the storms he's talking about, heavy-duty storms. We're talking about serious hurricane-striking winds. We're talking about powerful rain coming down in just buckets and torrents. We're talking about flooding, as if the first two weren't enough. Jesus gives the example for us in that passage, though, where he says there were two builders. The first one was a foolish builder. The guy went ahead, built this beautiful home, unbelievably lovely place, but he built it on a foundation of sand. And as a result, when the promise of that storm came, believe it or not, that home became a target and boom, it was destroyed. It was just wiped out to nothing. Then Jesus talks about the wise builder. He said this person went around, checked out very carefully, made a whole lot of questioning and working it through so that he found a place where the foundation was firm. Matter of fact, Jesus says it was a rock, and he built his foundation upon that rock. Then came the promise again. That storm came. That storm seeking to be able to destroy this person's house. Instead, the storm was not able to do so because the foundation was so firm. What Jesus was saying in this story about these two houses is that these are our stories, the story of our lives, and how they are built and what they're built upon is what really makes a difference for how you and I will handle the fact that in our lives we will have storms. Here's the crazy thing about storms that I want you to be able to appreciate, and that is this. You and I can't determine their intensity. You and I cannot determine their frequency. You and I cannot determine their duration, how long they will last. As a matter of fact, we have no say over that type of thing. But what we do know is that these storms are going to come. Well, you know something? I think I pride myself enough to be able to say that, hey, you know something? I'm not that foolish builder. I didn't build my story upon a foundation of sand. I mean, I'm not like those people in the past that were taking the Tide Pod challenge or a spoonful of cinnamon. I mean, that was foolish. And as a matter of fact, their house didn't stand. That foundation was not firm for whatever led them to be able to. Anyway, that's another thing. No, I'm the wise builder. But you want to know something else about being a wise builder? And that is that I kind of wanted to talk to God about that a little bit too. Hey, you're the rock I want to build my story upon. No question about that. But could we choose a different location where maybe there aren't such severe storms coming our way, but rather, you know, a place where the climate is such so there's just like gentle rains coming down that are warm enough that you can walk in, but they water the earth to keep everything green and beautiful. You know, rainbows in the sky, that sort of thing. Problem is, Jesus doesn't give us that option either. What he tells us is that what you need to be more concerned about than anything else is where you build this house, that it's upon a rock, and that rock is me. Here's two examples of storms that Jesus refers to and that are kind of powerful. In the New Testament, in Mark chapter 4, Jesus looks at his disciples one day and says, let's go over to the other side. Now, this is in the middle of the night, around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and he puts everybody in the boat, and basically he curls up and goes to sleep in the boat. They start rowing away from the shore, and it says a terrible storm broke out. The storm is so severe that what's crazy about it is that it says the boat became swamped with water, began to flood, and began to sink. They all think they're going to die. Their hope is gone. Dark, dark, dark outside, and despair completely sets in. And they wake Jesus up. And Jesus wakes up, and wakes up to the words that they're screaming at him, "Don't you care? We're about to die!" And it says Jesus got up, stood in the boat, and simply said a few simple words to the storm. "Hush! Be still!" And that storm stopped. Everything became completely calm. Hey, I want to let you know something. I would love it if every time I experienced a storm in my life, and it was of an intensity where I was losing hope and feeling myself drawn into despair, and everything looks black and bleak around me, like there's no way out, that I could simply say to Jesus, "Hey, don't you care?" And he would simply stand up and go, "Hush, be still." Hey, and that's the end of that storm. But you know something? That too is not always the way the storm affects my life. Many of us right now might be feeling too, in this COVID situation, that the storm that we're currently in doesn't seem to be any end immediately in sight. And as a matter of fact, we don't even understand how the intensity of it might be affecting us in the future and what might be yet to come. That type of storm. But maybe for you, it's something else. Broken relationships, hurt family situations. Maybe it's a health concern that you have or somebody you love really has. But either way, that storm that you're in right now, how do we deal with it? How do we approach what it is that Jesus wants us to be able to understand in the midst of the storm? Jesus, in the words of Matthew chapter 7 at the very, very end, the fascinating thing that he's talking about with those two builders, though, is he says, the way that you build your house upon the solid foundation, which is the rock, which is me, is if you take my words and you apply them in your life. And Jesus goes and says, if you're taking my words and you're honestly applying it in your life, I want you to be able to know something. You will hear the storm. You'll see the effects of the storm. You will be shaken with everything happening around you, but you will be secure. And I really believe that what he was trying to say to us here is that take the most often spoken command that I've made to you, and it is this: do not be afraid. Seriously? That was the most often spoken command by Jesus? Yes, that was his most often spoken command to us, because he understands our human condition. He understands our frailty. He understands how unnerving these storms can be in our life. And what Jesus says to us is this: do not be afraid. Well, what do you mean, Jesus, do not be afraid? Do not be afraid, because what you have come to understand and appreciate is how much I love you, how much I care about you, and the fact that I am with you in the midst of the storm. Isn't that the most beautiful thing about that scenario I just described, with Jesus saying to him, let's go over to the other side, and there he is in the boat with them. Now, there will be times in that boat experience and that same type of scenario where I have experienced it in the moments of my life and the severe storms as well, where Jesus has stood up and simply said, "Hush, be still," and the storm stopped. But let me share one final scenario with you right now. And in this final scenario, it comes from the book of Acts, and it's the Apostle Paul. I mean, in his biography, by the way, he mentions the fact that he was shipwrecked 3 times. If you want to book a travel companion, do not choose the Apostle Paul on a boat. That would not be the person you want to travel with. But one of the times that he was shipwrecked, it says he was on a boat with 275 other people on this boat. And it said that they launched ahead, away from the shore, everything's looking great, and it says all of a sudden a huge hurricane storm comes out of nowhere and engulfs the whole situation around them. What's crazy about this storm is that it said that the boat couldn't get its way out of this storm, the ship couldn't get its way out, and so as a result, it says that they're carried along in the storm for day after day after day. It says they couldn't see the sun by day, they couldn't see the stars by night. They were engulfed in darkness, being blown by the storm. The crazy thing about it is that towards the end of this period of time, with this storm, when they're going through this whole thing, amazing thing about it is that the Apostle Paul suddenly stands up one day and he says to everybody on board, I just want you to know something. The Lord has shown me that he's going to answer my prayers. And my prayers are not just for me, but for all of us. The Lord said not one of us is going to die. Not one of us. Oh, but by the way, we're going to lose the ship. It's going to be shipwrecked. It's going to be destroyed. But all of us will make it to shore safely. You know what? They all did. You can read the whole account for yourself in the book of Acts to be able to appreciate the fullness of the story. What I want you to be able to appreciate is this, though. There are moments in our lives in the storms where Jesus stands up and he says, hush, be still, and everything stops. And the storm goes away. But there will be other times in our lives where that storm will hit in such a way that you and I will realize something. It feels like we have lost everything. But Jesus wants us to be able to appreciate something. But our story continues. No matter what, our story continues. And if we have built the story on a firm relationship, trusting His love, His care, His compassion, and the promise of His presence with us always, then I want you to be able to know something. That's where real hope comes from. That's where real hope comes from. Knowing that Jesus is in those moments tells us not to be afraid because we trust His heart for us. I would encourage you, whatever the storm is that you're facing right now, look to the heart of the one who's in the storm with you, who has promised He has never left you. As a matter of fact, maybe just ask, in this storm right now, would you just hold on to me? Let me feel your love. Let me know your care. And you know what? I'll trust your goodness to bring me out of it.